This Gemara is a continuation of the Gemara before. I did tell you that there's a question as to what the last Pedic of Sanhedrin is. Is it Chelik, or the way we have it now, Gemara, or is it Elon and Achnokit? And Rashi over there seems to be saying that Chelik, the way we have it in the Gemara, is correct. But Rashi here is going to tell us that actually Nachnokin is the last, and that's why this Gemara continues with Edom Zayman. Just to remind you, Edom Zayman is, so two Edom come to court and say Reuben committed a crime against Shimon, or something happened against Shimon, or that Reuben owes money to Shimon. And then another two witnesses come along and say, they're mazim them. They say, how can you, we don't know if it happened, didn't happen, but one thing we do know is you were not there at the time in that place. We asked those 7 questions to pinpoint the time very accurately and the place. So the din is, we do unto these false witnesses exactly what they want to do to that innocent person. So the Mishnah in Makos starts off, interestingly, as Gemara will discuss why this Mishnah, when are there exceptions that we are still going to punish the witnesses even though we cannot administer to them the exact crime that they intended to do? Why can't we administer them the exact crime they intended to do? So the example we're going to give is, for example, they go to a kohen and they accuse the kohen of being a cholol. That means that he's no longer a kohen because his mother was a divorcee, married his father, or his mother was a chalutza. Chalutza is that when her husband died with no children, instead of marrying her brother-in-law, she got a chalitza, which is similar to divorce. The Torah doesn't say a kohen cannot marry a chalutza; it's the Rabbanan. It's similar to a divorce. That's what it is. You're severing the ties of being a wife, and so therefore, so therefore that's called. So what do we do there? If the Edom happen to be Yisraelim, or if the Edom happen to be a kohen, this is still a problem, as we'll see in the Gemara. So therefore, in that case, we'll give them a different punishment, especially if the Edom are Yisraelim. What are you going to do to them? Make them a chol? What does it mean? So therefore, we give them a different punishment. We give them 39 lashes. And so these are cases which are exception to the rule of Zaymin. Interesting, that's how we start with the Pedic Gemara. That's why. It says the Mishnah. Kate said, how to become Zaymin? You would think the Mishnah would tell you a standard case. The Edom found liars. They tried to make Reuben pay $100. They said Reuben will Chal Shabbos, and we'll give them the same punishment. No. We testify that this person here is the son of a grusha. His mother was a divorcee, and therefore he's a chol. Oy ben chalutza. His mother was a chalutza. Now, we don't say Yasazeh ben Grush Bechalutza. We cannot mete out to the Edom the same punishment as we give to the. You cannot. Excuse me 1 second. Ah. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So they say, we don't say that this person should be the son of that we treat the Edom as a Ben Grush Chalutza. Eloika Abayim, we give him 40 malchus. Now it's obvious, if the Edom were Yisraelim, then obviously they won't get the punishment. The Chiddush is that even if the Edom were Kohanim, and the Edom, the false Edom, turned out to be they were Kohanim, so maybe we should give them the same punishment they tried to do to this Kohen. And we're going to see tomorrow, we don't do that. We don't do that. Now, Tosfos here has a very fundamental question. What do we give the Edom with the Malchus? So Tosfos asks, where's the Kasha Zama? The Torah says, Vasisim loi, Kasha Zama lasalachi. We got to do to them what they want to do, and he give them lashes. And in fact, we learned in Sanhedrin Daf Tes over there that if you cannot give them the same punishment, then it's Edis She'i Atu Yochel Hazima. So Tosfos gives 2 Yisaitic answers, which is the Yisait in the whole, I think, over here. One answer in Tosfos is that this is the Kasha Zamam over here. Since we cannot give them the punishment that they did, and not only that, because they wanted to give a lav, what did they say? You're a chol, and therefore what? Your mother did an avera. She married your father when you should have married. The whole thing is a lav. So what do we give them? The punishment that you normally get for a lav, which is malchus. So therefore, it is a case of Kasha Zamam. That's answer number 1 in Tosfos. Answer number 2 in Tosfos is, it is not Kasha Zaman. It's not Kasha Zaman, because over here there is no Kasha Zaman. The Torah clearly says that in these cases there's no Kasha Zaman, as we'll soon see in the Gemara. So we're giving you a punishment because you lied. Nothing to do with Kasha Zaman. It says, you shouldn't lie, and you lied. What's the basis of this machlekes? The basis of this machlekes is what's the whole idea of hazama? Is it exeris akashav? The Torah says you got to give the times. It has to be able to be found lying. Why? No logic to it. That's what the Torah wants. In fact, the whole idea of Aegis is exeris akashav. Why do you believe these two people? Moshe and Aaron, we don't believe, but these two people do believe. So the whole idea of Aegis is exeris akashav. Or we say no. Aegis is a logical thing, and Aegis is a very logical thing. How do you know that they're telling the truth? You got to have checks and balances. If they know they can get caught out and get in trouble, maybe that's going to make sure that they say the truth. So we say the same over here. That's the you say the thesis. If you learn that kasha zomim is checks and balances, so here also they want to do a lav, we give them the punishment of lav, and that's it's eidish at yochalizima because they know they're going to get malchus. They'll tell us the truth, and it's on par. A lav malchus. But the second answer tells us there is no, the tak is not kasha zomim, and we're giving them malchus because they're liars. L'sanda b'reacha, don't do that zomim, because kasha zomim is exeris akasav. If you don't follow exactly what Torah says, it's not kasha zomim. But we're going to give you a malchus because you're a liar. Big enough communal halacha between one of them is it says in the Mishnah chalutza. Chalutza is only a isur d'rabbanan. Where's the kasha zomim here? According to the Torah, there's no isur for a kohen to marry a chalutza, and therefore the children are not halal. How does the Mishnah learn chalutza? So some Rishonim say b'derech haga. It's always every time you say grusha, you always say chalutza. So it's like a phrase. But we don't mean chalutza at all, because chalutza there's no kasha zamam. And the other Rishonim say no, even though it's rabbanon, you're aser. So the question like this. So first of all, we can say whether it's because apart from that is, if it's the rabbanon, as far as kasha zamam, it's told in two answers. If it's over here kasha zamam, there's no kasha zamam when there's no isur here. The Torah said there's no isur, so what do you kasha zamam last alachi? According to Torah, nothing happened here. But if you learn, if the problem is you lied, who cares if the isur is the rabbanon? But the fact is you lied, and because you lied, you're going to get malchus ma'atayda. Very similar question. If let's say you gave, if somebody does not eat chalavakim and you gave them to eat chalavakim, are you overlifting either ma'atayda or only midrabbanon? Because the fact is ma'atayda is no isur; it's only an isur d'rabbanon. So there, a similar question is: if they either a part of the aveda that he's doing, or if they either is a separate aveda altogether, you've made him stumble. There's part of the aveda, then there's no aveda according to Torah. So listen, either. But if it's because it's a separate aveda altogether, I shouldn't make someone stumble. I made you stumble because in your world you don't have it, and I made you stumble. So same thing here. But how do we understand chalutza? Anyway, let's continue. So the Mishnah first. Another example is we say this person is chayiv galus. He killed somebody by mistake, and you have to run to exile. Ain't oimi. We don't say galus at tachta. We don't say that the edim now who are found to be liars should go to galus. They get 40 malchus. Why don't we send them to galus? The Gemara looks like. So first thing I want to understand. I don't understand. The Mishnah, the whole text of the Mishnah seems to be wrong. Hakate said ain't edim nasas zayin. You give me an example which are exceptions. The Mishnah starts off. I'll give you examples of edim zaymin, and instead of giving us a classical example, you give us two exceptions when there's not really zaymin. In fact, this sounds more like Tosis that says that it's not a din in kasha zamam. This is a din in leisanda bereacha. You lied, you get malchus. So that's the wording of the Gemara. But number one, Megatoni lekaman says weiter. Aval amru lehem. The next mission says he told them, hey, meeting. How can you say that this and this happened? You with us elsewhere. How do you zaymin? They are zaymin. So that's what this should have been the case. And not only that, by saying the next mission, that's a case of zaymin, as if to say, but this is not zaymin. And yet the introduction to all of this is Kate the Edim Nasim Zaymin. The answer is Tana Hasam Koi. Our mission is a continuation of Masechta Sanhedrin. And if you look at Rashi says that Eloheinu Nachnokin is the last Pedic in Sanhedrin. So which is different than the Rashi says in Sanhedrin, in Sanhedrin where Pedic Chelik is the last thing. But here he says that Eloheinu is the last Pedic, but that's Siyuma the Sanhedrin. It's the end of the Sanhedrin. And there it talks about about what kind of missa you get, and if you can get another missa, give this missa. So now it says there, call hazay magdim la missa. All the zaymin, you give them that missa that they deserve. Right? You don't give them another missa, you give them the missa that they deserve. Chutz, the only one is zaymei. The Mishnah says that the exception is zaymei bas koyin. Uboila. The same if a bas kohen gets straight for them, and the man that she commits adultery with gets chenik. Which punishment do you give the Zaymim? Not what she gets, but what the husband gets, the man gets. So that's the only exception where you don't get that misa. Ela misa chedes, right? You don't get the misa her, you get other misa. And then this mission continues. The yesh that not only you don't give half of the what they try to do. You don't. General rule is whenever you do two avelis, stricter punishment, no lenient punishment, you always give the stricter punishment. And the mission said there's an exception. We're not going to give the stricter. We're going to give the more lenient. And now this mission continues. And now we're not going to give any. There's no hazam at all. Not even partial. There's no hazam here at all. Ella Malkus Aboyim only you get Malkus. And the Mishnah says, Kate said, you get the punishment. A like is Aboyim, you give him 40 Malkus. Taisa learn Magdima means only something else altogether. He said it means we learned before in Sanhedrin that you give the punishment that you can. If you cannot give the punishment that he deserves, give them another punishment. Magdima means first thing is you try to give the punishment that they deserve. If not, if for whatever reason you can't, then you go to the next punishment. Interesting, machlek is a chakira. If the bas kohen is reifa, and you go after the boiler, right? You get the chenik like the person. What happened? You don't know who the boiler is, or the boiler is a cotton, 9 years old and over, so the boiler won't get punished. In that case, what do you give the bas kohen? But the bas kohen gets reif. It's not the bas kohen. The edim zaymi. In that case, the only punishment they wanted to give is reifa because the man involved is not chayiv, or we don't know who it is, or is not chayiv at all. Or do we say that no? Always, you always get the punishment. If there would have been a man, what would the man's punishment be? And therefore, you're men, so therefore, that's the punishment you get. Anyway, why taka don't we make them? Why don't we punish them? Now, what's the question? What's the question? If they're Adam Zayman Yisrael, then obviously we have no breda. So we're asking, how do you know you don't give them the same punishment? So some of the Shainim say the Gemara is talking about if they're kohenim. If the Adam Zayman are kohenim, the cholapachas, they should get punished. Whatever they try to do, they want to make him a chol, they should become chalal. Some say from it even the Yisrael. Because the Yisrael, we should treat him like a chol in what way? That if he lives with a woman, that woman becomes a chalala, that she can never marry in the future. So the Gemara, you know why? I'm going to be sure of Levi, Dama Kros, and Pasik, Vasisim, Loi, Kasha, Zamam, Loi, Loi Lazaro. What did you want to do to this person? You wanted to affect him, his children forevermore. Chol, his children, Chalal Mazevaitis. But so if I become a chol, if you're going to punish the Adam Zaym and they become a chol, then we'll punish them and their children. But it says, Vasisim Loi. The only one you can punish is him and not his children and grandchildren. So the Gemara asks, so what's the big deal? Let's only punish the Adam Zaym and their chalalim, but their children, it won't get carried on. So the Gemara, so that's not what they wanted to do. They wanted to make that innocent kohen there into a chalal, which means that he and his future descendants are chalalim, and you're going to punish what? Only him. That's not the same thing. As the Rishonim added a line, it's only a half a hazam. It's only, the Gemara doesn't say that. It's like more like a Gezeir's Kasser, but the Rishonim, some Rishonim, Ramban and others, say that it's a half a thing. Comes out a very important thing from it. The famous case of Choshen Simchav Ches has a whole Chakira. Rashi, we have a concept called Kim Lebed Rabbaneh. So the Rishonim ask a question. You're telling me you don't do a half a hazam. We learned that if a person says that this Naira Hamarasa committed adultery, so what did they try to do? Two things. They wanted to kill her because she committed adultery, and they wanted to forfeit her ksuba, which she's entitled to. The thing is that they only get misa. And then we had a whole question. The Gemara, why can't they argue? We only came to ask her to lose her ksuba. We never wanted to kill her. And then we say that's talking about you have to give hasra and spell out what it is. The bottom line is they'll get killed, but they don't have to pay the money for the ksuba. That's a half hazama. You just made a rule here you can't do half hazamas. And that's a half hazama. You're only going to kill the Edom. You're not taking the money. So the Rishonim answer, a very the answer here, that since the rule there is Kim Lemed Rabbaneh, or Kam Lemed Rabbaneh, whichever way you pronounce it, and therefore it's tantamount to getting both punishments. In other words, what does Kam Lemed Rabbaneh mean? Not that we're going to give you the stricter and we're going to omit the lighter. The stricter punishment includes the lighter punishment. So it's not a half hazama. You got the full hazama. Very important. So what happens is Rashi says in Bamatzir Tzadgal, Rashi says a rule generally that Kama b'derabbanate doesn't mean that I don't have to pay you. I do have to pay you, but the Bezin can't force me to pay both. And therefore, if you come and grab the money, if the victim comes and grabs the money from me, let's say they got, you get Malkus and you don't get paid to pay money. The victim grabs the money, he toughs, then we don't take it back. You can keep it. That's what Rashi says. Comes the Mashal and says, makes a chiddush. Mashal says that's only if you actually gave him the stricter punishment. In other words, you gave him the Malkus, whatever it is. You gave him you gave him the say the Misa. You gave him the Misa. Then what do you call it? Sorry, if only if you did not give him the Misa, because we have a rule. Tana V'Chizkiah says that if you commit, let's say Chil Shabbos, but we don't have a Hasra for the Chil Shabbos, then maybe you should pay for the house that you burned down. You don't have to, because this is called Chayove Misa Shegin. Since you didn't have Veda that entitled to Misa, come Lebed you don't pay the money either. So Rashi there says that if the victim of the house takes the money away, he can keep it. Says the Mashal, only in that case, because the fact that you didn't give him the stricter punishment. But if you would have killed him, then you cannot go to a state and take the money because he paid you the money, because the Misa includes the money. And the Ksasa's words there is, Ein Ela Divinus. It doesn't make sense. But actually, the Rishonim right here supports completely what Mashal says, because they say, what does Kamad Rabban mean? It means that the stricter punishment includes the lighter punishment. But so therefore, but only when you got the stricter punishment. Okay, let's continue more. Sorry. Anyway, right? Sometimes I can go a little bit, I'm sorry, just I get carried away. Maskiv Lord Avina asked a question. You came so, but following that logic. Sorry, I skipped. Sorry, I skipped. Because we said you can't do a half azama. Our Podom a different answer. He says, Kalvachaymer, have a Kalvachaymer. Maha Mechal, and Mechal, if a Kohen marries a divorcee, the children are Chalalim, but he himself does not become a Chalal, and he mamash did an Aveda. He's Habol Lechal. These Ein Zayman just came along and made a story up, but nothing happened. Surely we shouldn't make them the Chalalim. You follow that Kalvachaymer, you follow that logic, you can't batal the Titus Ein Zayman, the whole Ein Zayman falls apart. Why? Ma hacycle, and we don't know the way Rashi learned, other Shem learned totally different. Well, ma hacycle ain't a niskul. The thing is, what happens if the agents, the false agent come in and say Reuben killed Shimon? Okay, so the Bezin goes ahead and kills Reuben. Then comes along two other agents and say, hey, you guys are liars, you weren't even there at the time. What do we do to the agent Zayman? Nothing. Because once the Bezin carried out the punishment, and the logic of that we'll learn Daf Hema Beis, we'll talk about it then. Once the Bezin carried out the punishment, the Eben Zayman, we don't, it's too late. Kasha Zomam Las, the only way they intended. So, using your Kalvachayim, you should say, if they actually killed an innocent person. We don't kill the false Eidim. If they only intended to kill an innocent person, we should kill them. Yet that's the whole din of Eben Zayim. So your whole Kalvachayim doesn't make sense. What's clear is Kiddushin Mikar. The first answer, only punish the Eidim and not the children, and we don't do half Azam. Okay, so weiter. How do you know this? Why Taka don't you go to Golus? If the Eidim want to go to Ori Miklat, they said he killed somebody by mistake. Why don't they have to go to Ori Miklat? Who if somebody kills somebody inadvertently, he flees to one of the cities of refuge. Who? What's a who? Who relies Zaymin? Only he does, not Zaymin. Whenever it says an extra word who, comes to highlight something, him and not the false witnesses. Rabbi Yechon says Kal v'chaymer. Rabbi Yechon have a Kal v'chaymer that he doesn't go to Ori Miklat. Mahu sha'asa ma'isa b'meisid. If you kill somebody deliberately, but there were no witnesses, there was no hasra, let's say, or the witnesses no hasra, the din is you don't go to Golus. Golus is only for those who are b'sheigig. Is hein shalai asa ma'isa? They didn't do anything; they just spoke words. Right? Akim is fast 11. Oh, they said words. That was the guy did something, kills by mistake. B'mezid, and they did b'mezid. Madach, he did a pool of b'mezid. You killed someone deliberately. You don't go to Golus. We don't kill you either because you with no warning. So here, when you only did words b'mezid, you made up a story and you concocted the story. And surely, you should go to Golus. Said what do you mean? Just the opposite. Behi in the sentence. Who shas a ma'isa b'mezid? Oh, that guy did such a terrible thing. They killed someone deliberately. Why should we help them with the city of refuge? But like we don't want the Golos to be the kapara. Oh, but the Hain they only spoke words. They didn't do a Maisa Meza. It's a much lesser Aveda. Maybe they could go to Golos. Nami legally go to Golos. Have a kapara. What's clear is Kaddish Lakish. Now, there's a big machlekes. What's the whole idea of Golos? Is it a punishment or is it an atonement? Seems pretty clear in the Gemara here that the Gemara, at least in this part here, the Gemara says that Golus is a kapara, and so on. But Lav Dafka, that's a maskana. There's a mashal later on we'll talk about, and other things. But some of the Shainim say over here, on this Gemara here, that the Golus itself is not the kapara. It's the misa of the Kohen Gadol that's the kapara. We call it Golus kapara, but it's not the Golus itself. The Golus is the punishment. So where does it come? We learned before, when they stone somebody or whatever, the misses, they get punished, and we make them do vidui, and the vidui is the tshuva, is the kapara. So over here, what do you call it? Then we had a Bible, but over there, if you get killed by Bezin just itself, is that a kapara? Over here, when the Gemara says Golus is kapara, Golus is not a kapara, Golus is a punishment. The kapara is the miss of the Kohen Golus. What do you have an allusion to the Torah? For in Zayvin, saying what remes? What do you mean remes? The Torah. In Shaita, Vasisa, you should do to the witnesses what they try to do others. El remes leiden Zayvin shall like him and not try him. How do they get Malchus? Sorry. First, we have to know the right now we're talking about the punishment. And also we'll see later on about that what Azhar is. So Gemara says, how do you know that they get punished? In other words, here, then Rome come back to Chalutza, you're going to give them Malchus. How do you know? If Siva says, V'tzdiku is a tzaddik, v'hishiz a Russia, you should find the tzaddik, vindicate the tzaddik, incriminate the Russia. Well, you've been haks the Russia. So V'tzdiku is a tzaddik, v'hishiz a Russia, you've been haks the Russia. What's one thing with another? Just say, if the Bezin understands that this person is guilty, haks the Russia. What's the gay here that V'tzdiku is a tzaddik, v'hishiz a Russia? We're talking about initially this person was an innocent person and we found the person guilty, right, based on Adam. So now the Torah says revert back. The Adam Zayim come. But also Adam Achini, if it's this, the second period Adam came and they reclaimed the innocence of that person, the Mikara, Vishavinu Lahan, and they turned the Adam Zayim. So we're not talking about the Bezdin now, we're talking about the Adam. First we thought we're talking about the Bezdin, which is what's the relevance. Now we're talking about the Adam. Adam themselves found the first person guilty. The second Adam found the Adam guilty and the first person innocent. Decided they've justified the first person in the whole. You do the Adam, you get Malcolm. So he answered, ain't like in love. You don't get Leisana because that's a lav. Talking is only a lav she'em and Malchus. So therefore we learn from V'hoyim bin Hakaz Rasha. But now that we learned bin that you get Malchus, many of the Shainim say, what you're really getting Malchus for is Leisana. We would have thought you don't get Malchus for Leisana because of Lav Sheva Maisa. Once the Torah is bin Haksirosha, what are you getting Aveda Leisana? And that's the two answers places. Because if it's Leisana, it has nothing to do with Edim Zaymin. You lied. But if it's for Hizdikus of Tzaddik and you just leave it for Hizdikus of Tzaddik, then that's part of Edim Zaymin. Then even in the case of Ben Grusha Chalutza, it's Edim Zaymin. Talk about we learned. Dalvan and Edim Zaymin. 14 regarding Edim Zaymin. Number one. Ein Nasa Ben Grusha Chalutza. We don't make them in Ben Grusha we just learned. Number two. They ain't going to learn a miklat that we just learned. You don't send them to our miklat. Number three. They don't pay kaifer. If their animal goes ahead and kills somebody, they said animal killed somebody, the din is that the animal gets killed. And the owner pays kaifer. But the agent, if they're trying to be liars, they don't pay kaifer. We'll soon see why not. If they say that somebody stole money and that person has no money, the din is you sell that person as an evidivity. Turned out to be they were liars. We don't sell the agent as evidivity. So the Makiva says that if they come forward and say we are we're liars, and the Maida we don't have to pay because Maida beknas. If you're Maida by a penalty, you don't pay. Ain't Nas. Nagmar explains. Ain't Nas. We just said. Ain't going let a mikla. You don't go to a mikla kedamar. The Mishalman is a kapara. There's a machlekes. This kaifer that you pay, the owner of the cow pays. Is it a kapara or is it money? He's paying the value of a victim. His cow never killed somebody, or is he paying like a kapara because he didn't take care of his cow the way he should have? It's his fault. So if you hold that kufr is a kapara, the Adam's kapara, which kapara? If it's mum and they try to make this person pay money and it's trying to be they were liars, so they pay the money. But if it's a kapara, they didn't do this. They didn't have this kapara. Every kapara is different. They mishamas go kufra kapara kapara, but hanilab kapara, and these Eidim don't need that kind of kapara. Mantana, who holds kufra kapara? Who's that author? He said kapara. Who said? That's Rabbi Shmuel. Benoish Rabbi Yechim ben Breki. Rabbi Yechim ben Breki had a son. Rabbi Shmuel is him. How do I know which Rabbi Shmuel? Time we learned the nos and pidyon nafshay. It says in the pasuk, and he should pay the pidyon of his nefesh. Talking about the kaifer, and uses the expression that once we assess the value of the kaifer, then the nos and pidyon nafshay has to pay redemption money. Whose money? The value of the person that got killed, or the value of the mazik? The owner of the cow. The nizik. Rabbi Shmuel says, sorry, the Tanakh said the value of the nizik. Rabbi Shmuel said, the main mazik, the value of the mazik. What's going on here? What's the machlekes? My love, the halka mivlugi. This is the argument. You're paying the value of the victim, then you got to pay to the victim. Who's the one who has a kapara? The mazik needs a kapara, so you pay his value. I'm going to pop it no. Kuli alma kufra kapara. I can argue that everyone agrees. There's no argument. Everyone agrees kufra kapara. What's going on over there? Even though kufra is kapara, but how much money do you pay? But the nizik shamina, the kapara is because he killed somebody, whatever his value is. But the mazik shamina, since it's my kapara, Rabbi Shmuel says you got to pay your value. Why did the Rabbanan say the victim? It's my kapara. I should pay my value. Because Nemr it says here it says im koifer usually says, and then we have another pasuk of a man. If you strike a woman and you cause the woman to miscarry, and you have to assess the value of those children. Over there, we're assessing the value of the victim. Therefore, we also assess the value of the victim. But Rabbi Shmuel knew so good. Rabbi Shmuel, it says the pasuk the nosan pidyon nafshay. It says clearly, pay the pidyon of yourself. Nu rabbanan. In pidyon nafshe, you're right. The atonement is for yourself. How much money you give? The Einim Kodi, you don't sell be'evet ivri. I would have thought to say, if that person is the innocent person that you said was a gunner, and the Bezin said you got to pay the $100. He could have paid the $100. He would not have been sold as a slave. So the Eidim didn't want to sell him as a slave. So therefore, the Eidim themselves, even though they have no money, they're destitute, they will not get sold as a slave. Because the din is, if you cannot pay out your gneva, you have to be sold as a slave. But this person could have paid it off. How do you mean that since the person, the innocent person that they accuse of being a liar, Ganef, had the money, the Migadim is that was he wouldn't have been sold. So they never tried to make him a slave. The lesser day, if that person didn't have any money, so what would have happened as a result? He would have been sold as a slave. So in other words, even though you didn't directly want to sell him as a slave, but it drags along. Even though the agent themselves might have money, they can pay it out. Ms. Navna, but you tried to make him be sold as a slave, so therefore you get sold as a slave as well. Says Rabbi, why can't they argue? We didn't sell you as a slave. We said you got to pay back the Geneva. If you would have had money, or you would have borrowed the money, you could have paid the money. You wouldn't have, not necessarily been sold as a slave. So it's step number 2. We didn't go to step number 2. Is me having Ms. Davnat? Would you have been sold? So now me let Ms. Davnat. Why should we be sold? Ella Sovar Amnun remember the following. Hani mili heicha the Islay lay oily they do. If either one of them has money, doesn't matter who it is, the victim or the agent, then since you had an option of paying money, you don't get sold as slave. Aval heicha the less they loy they do, neither of them had money. Then obviously when you said that he stole, what would have happened to that guy? He would have been sold as a slave. And let's say you found liars, and now we say to you, okay, well, you pay back today, but you don't have the money either. So therefore, you're both in the same boat. He's mizdavna. Rabbi concludes, I disagree. Regardless, you know why? The nimker begnei vasai amarachmani only gets sold in your gneva. Begnei vasai v'loibes mamay only in your gneva, and not if you just made up a story. Yeah, exactly. Same idea. Because a kosov. It says my time. It says if you're moide yourself, if you go to Bez and say, "Look, I was a liar. I said he was there. I wasn't even there. It was somewhere else." You don't have to pay. Why? Because somebody holds kenosuhu. It's only a penalty. We cannot say mishal piyasa. The penalty you don't pay on your own. Oh, but I'll prove to you. I proved to you that Ein Zaymin is only a penalty. They didn't do anything. They just said that Reuben owes money to Shimon. And yet, if they said that Reuben was Machal Shabbos, we're going to kill Aiden. If they said that Reuben doesn't pay money, and what did they do? Nothing. So what are they paying? They're not reimbursed. Nothing happened yet. In fact, if something did happen, they don't get punished. That's what a penalty is. A penalty is when you pay more or less than what actually happened. Amar Nachman said, I'll prove it as well. Shadi moment biyad bailin. The money that you accused the Reuben of stealing is still sitting, by Reuben. No, you didn't take it away from Reuben yet. Umashamlan, yet you want the agent to pay. Nobody lost anything, and you want the agent to pay. My new the lawyer Shemaisa. I understand. What are you adding to what Rabbah said? Saying the same thing. Nothing happened yet. Hainu the Rabbah. What are you adding? I think what are you right? Amo, just say the Chainom Rab Nachman. Rab Nachman agrees. Rab Nachman agrees. Okay, we'll stop over here and see you tomorrow, Mr. Shah. Okay.